have taste in a way that's meaningful to software people.
Hello, I'm Bill Gates.
I would recommend TypeScript. Yeah, it writes a lot of code for me, and usually it's slightly wrong.
I'm reminded, incidentally, of Rust here.
Rust.
Congressman, iPhone is made by a different company, and so, you
will not learn Rust while skydiving.
Well, I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about large neural networks. It's really an honor to be here.
Rust.
Data Topics. Welcome to the Data Topics podcast.
Hello and welcome to Data Topics Unplugged, your casual corner of the web where we discuss what's new in data every week. From IBM to Tupac, Bart, anything goes. We're also on YouTube, LinkedIn, X, Twitch. Don't expect much from Twitch yet, but it's there. Check us out. Feel free to leave a comment or a question. Today is the 30th of April.
Yes.
Of 2024. My name is Murillo. I'll be hosting you together with Bart, my partner in crime.
Hi.
And we have a very special guest today, Bart. We have Mehdi.
The one.
The one and only. There you go. How are you?
I'm good. I don't know. I was going to London. I got lost in Belgium somewhere.
And you're in, well, maybe before I start with all the questions, would you mind introducing yourself a bit? People that haven't heard. I mean, I think we were discussing just before. I think it's
hard to never have heard of Mehdi.
I know, right? So I feel like
if you live in Belgium, which is a small country, right?
I would go as far if you are active in the data community and live in Europe.
Yeah.
Because you don't live in Belgium, do you?
No. I'm based in Berlin, so yeah, I can give a few words about myself. So I've been working in data for 10 years now. So I started in the ugly days of Hadoop on-premise cluster and all those things. Mostly as a data engineer. I've been doing different roles, but data engineering stick to me. And more recently, I moved to actually Berlin. That's where I'm based for the past 5 years. Joined different tech company over there, Klarna, Back Market, the refurbished website, and Trade Republic. And then now more recently switching to developer advocacy. So at MotherDuck, which is on the mission to ship DuckDB in the cloud. So developer advocate, but I'm first and foremost a data engineer. I need to build things.
Yes.
So yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Very, very cool. This is your website right there. I put it on the screen for everyone to see.
I need to update this one, but it's still doing okay.
No, it's still nice. Well, what do you need to update?
I don't know. I usually update my personal website every 4 or 5 years. It's been, I think, 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
So I think I have a few more projects. The blog is not really up to date. But yeah.
Need to put DuckDB there.
Yeah. So that's probably, I need to put 1 or 2 ducks. Yeah. Probably.
And there's a rumor that I'm just creating now that you decided to come to the podcast after you've seen all the ducks around and you were fed up. You're like, this is absurd.
Yeah.
People are just appropriating these ducks. I need to go there. And
that's a really good point.
Straight.
Like, there is a duck there. I mean, this one is belonging to me, is always traveling with me. But it's fun to have so many ducks around data routes. Yeah.
Exactly.
What's the reason behind?
Because it's fun.
Okay.
It's fun to have a lot of ducks around, right?
Okay.
I feel like Bart, one day he just put it there.
But did you ever in your life hear someone say it's not fun to have a lot of ducks around?
I have never heard that.
That's my point.
Yeah, but I mean, nobody said it's not fun to have a lot of monkeys around. That's not why they have tons of monkey around.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
Next week is going to be a completely different podcast. It's going to be all about monkeys.
Yeah.
Cool. And then you mentioned so we mentioned ducks, DuckDB and MotherDuck, right? For people that haven't heard of MotherDuck or DuckDB, would you like to just give a quick...
Yeah. I mean, that's my job, right?
Yes.
I didn't expect I had to do that. But DuckDB is basically an embedded OLAP database. So that means it's run in process. In other words, there is multiple clients. CLI, Java. But if you're working with Python, you just do a pip install Python. Pip install DuckDB is the equivalent of SQLite for analytics if you want. And so it can process a lot of data set and pretty fast. It's been getting a lot of traction. We passed the 1.5 million downloads only on the Python client, which is pretty crazy. Close to 20K stars on GitHub. I know that's vanity metrics. We shouldn't rely on those ones. But still, that gives you a thing. And I probably should mention that MotherDuck is not the creator of DuckDB, which is the open source project. This was born in Amsterdam, so at the CWAI, which is the Center of Research in Science and Mathematics, by Hannes and Mark. And so this is mostly maintained by the DuckDB Foundation, DuckDB Labs, basically. And we have a tight partnership with them. So MotherDuck, which is basically the commercial company which provide DuckDB in the cloud. So it's an interesting business model, but because we don't see that often where it's mostly basically the creator of the open source project is the one that's going to commercialize it, but the creator of DuckDB had different goals, and I think it's nice. It's really a research project at the end because it's the first all app system embedded database. So they have different goals. For good and bad for us, for MotherDuck, I would say it's a different, relationship. But yeah, I think it's really interesting, and I think it's always important to highlight that MotherDuck is the US commercialized DuckDB, and DuckDB is born in Amsterdam. So Hannes, if you listen to this, hi,
shout out.
Exactly. I think you will appreciate.
Very cool. I was actually talking about MotherDuck and DuckDB early today. I have a Brazilian friend that we chat about these things, and he was asking about DuckDB more. And I mentioned him, so shout out to Rudy. Talking about Brazilian audience, I recently learned Mehdi has a huge following of Brazilians. Huge.
Also in Brazil, you mean?
Also in Brazil, exactly. Without speaking a single word of Portuguese, which makes it the more impressive, I would say.
Yeah, so actually it's not like a huge part because most of my audience I can share is like 45%, 40% US, then we got 30% India, and then 15% Europe, and the rest the world. And the Brazilian thing was coming from someone following me, which is a Brazilian, and kind of like using all my content and just giving me back credits, but doing his own blogs. Or it didn't even I did a design of a project. He did a better design than me.
Oh, wow.
And so that was like, I said, okay, actually my design is not clear enough. I don't know the way that the shapes were done or the link. So I redo it. But so it's really fun how, things can go around. And yeah, I did a live stream with him where he was translating things in Portuguese. So I was giving the content in English. And it was a really interesting experience for me to have such an engagement in the Brazilian communities and not understanding of words. And also when he was translating, he could say, so this dumb has said that. Like, I don't know what he was saying.
You'd be
right?
like, yes.
It's really like a big following through a proxy. Like,
So, but, and I think that just lead me that as as Mr. Beast is doing in the entertainment on YouTube, is translating, all this YouTube channel, and his biggest audience is actually not in the US. And I think we kind of have this bias in tech that everybody is learning in English.
True.
If they are smart enough to get into tech. But I think that's not true. I think there is really smart people where language is still a barrier for them. And I think we should solve that in some way. I think AI can help, but I think having champions in different, culture and country helping to that's an amazing thing, I think.
Yeah. And I was actually thinking, I was talking to Mehdi before I went live, that I didn't realize the importance of having blog posts as well in Portuguese, right? Because in my head, it's like maybe the video format is more interesting, right? Because people can all translate, like have Chrome extension. I think actually Google Chrome does it natively, right? But there's still a big aspect of searchability, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah.
So interesting point. I also do, coming from Brazil, I do see that even the people that are very knowledgeable in the tech community, a lot of times they do content in English. So there's a big group of people in Brazil. Like sometimes they do speak English. Most Brazilians, I believe, do speak English, but it's not like they're fluent. And talking about tech is not something it's not easy either, right? Like the English you learn in school is not about scalability and whatever, right? Like it's a different type of thing. You know, you can speak English and still like proven point is that if I have to talk about work in Portuguese, sometimes I trip
it's the
up.
same for me.
Like it's not like it doesn't come naturally, right?
Exactly.
So I do see a lot of the value of trying to like just make it more accessible to people.
And I learned a whole new vocabulary in English since I have a kid, like 5 years.
Really?
Like all the animals and so on. I have no clue. Almost even in French, I almost don't know like what the hell is this? But now I know in English because I never use those words at work.
Yeah.
And you're actually studying Dutch?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are gonna do like a special edition later this year in Dutch.
Yeah, we can. I won't be as talkative.
We're gonna record it in 2 languages.
In 2 languages.
First in English, then we redo it in Dutch.
Maybe we can do in 3. Like Mehdi can come, and then we can do in French as well.
Ooh, that's much more difficult for me.
I think French will have more audience because Netherlands people, like Flemish and the Netherlands, they speak really good English on average. So this is where a good counter example where probably is not that much forfeit.
Yeah.
But for French side, like there is a lot of pure French content which is happening right now and still useful.
I notice also a lot, like when I do meetings in the Netherlands or in Belgium versus France, for example, like doing a presentation in English, like everybody's comfortable in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
When I do this in France, like it really stretches people. Like you have people that don't follow anymore. Like it's the barrier is bigger.
I do think some people too, they're more they're not just comfortable. I've been in meetings where the person was like, "Oh, I understand, but I don't feel comfortable speaking. So I'll just speak in French." And they were like, "Okay, that's fine."
We did a DuckDB meetup in Paris. It's the only one we did in French so far.
Ah, really?
100 people show up. All the question in French.
Yeah,
I couldn't answer anything.
You're like,
because it's really hard for me to kind of translate every single,
but it's true,
term of content that I never translate them. So yeah.
And now I live in a world where if I meet another person from Portugal or Brazil and we're going to talk about like machine learning or something, I always have to preface the conversation with, I'm Brazilian and speak Portuguese. I'm not claiming I'm not fluent, but I may trip up here and there because of this, and this.
Yeah.
And I think it's also because sometimes if I do, I have my friends in Brazil, every time we'll trip up on something, they were like, "Oh, Murilo thinks he's European now. Oh, now he doesn't know how to speak Portuguese anymore."
Are you like that?
I'm not me, but my friends would say that to me. They were like, "Oh, Murilo thinks he's better than us now." That's not true at all. I just get sad. But yeah, talking about sharing content, you mentioned that's a big part of what you do, no?
Yeah.
How would you describe your role? You mentioned advocate, but
yeah. How would you describe it, DevRel? I think it's an interesting topic because a lot of people have a misconception about it. But I was just saying before we start the podcast that I actually code as much than I was doing as a staff engineer. So I was working in tech as a staff engineer because as a staff engineer, after you pass senior, you basically, leading project. You're still coding, but coding for bootstrapping, or there is different structure in tech companies. Some of them there is different kind of archetype in staff engineer. But the bottom line of this is that you're not coding as much as a senior engineer. That's definitely true. You're writing RFC, reviewing things, reviewing PR. You do a lot of reviews.
Yeah.
And that's the same here as a DevRel. It's just the other side of work is different. I do content, but I still need to run stuff in production. And who would be if I teach other people data engineering concept or DuckDB concept if I'm not running production pipeline, right? So this is really important to me. And I think it's just that there is different kinds of DevRel, which some of them are less technical, depending on the product they sold.
Yeah.
Right. If they sold like an UI friendly to design pipeline, they don't like, we could argue that they could because, it's a building blocks.
Yeah.
But the point is that they're probably less technical than someone, selling a database product or,
But to understand correctly, like you still, like your day-to-day job, you're still coding as a data engineer.
Yeah. So it's like, I need to be able to code and to do deeper project. And those inspire my content.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I have also surface content that, I know the audience needs, which is kind of boring for me. Like I won't learn specifically new. And so it's kind of like finding a good middle ground where I have, deep project that keeps my technical skills sharp, where it's going to address more to intermediate and advanced users base. But those, baseline of user are rather small versus the, what you need to raise the awareness, which is, the beginner. So it's finding the good match between the overlap and doing compromise of those. But sometimes I'm like, okay, I need to go back to code because I've done too much hello world stuff. And so, it's some other company like find opportunities where you do a custom integration. You're really part of the product team. Here we have our own data pipeline internally. We do our duck fooding. We use our own tools. So I think like that's clear opportunity for me. And I've heard that in other like data company where they have DevRel, they all mostly work also, for example, DBT on their internal data pipeline and so on.
I think within the team is also a bit of a fine line to tread, in a sense, like if you're too far removed from the content, like then you just become someone from the marketing team, right?
Yeah,
like
and that's the fine line to, especially in startup, which is often hard to find. I think as you grow, because MotherDuck is now like a 50 people company, but I was a 19 employee a year ago. So we are growing, and actually I have 2 new teammates in my team, which are more on the marketing side to help me out. But that's this kind of thing where I feel like, okay, this is too much marketing for me. I shouldn't be doing that. And I think that's one of the big challenge if you work on DevRel. You need to say no, and need to say, where is your added value? Is it like at the end? That's why I'm defining myself. I'm an engineer, and this is what should be valued, not like social media, a community manager or whatsoever. It's a part of my work, but I shouldn't. That's not where I had the most of my value.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think I also have some questions on developer relations. Maybe just to go over, you linked this post as well.
Link this post.
I saw some funny quotes. I haven't read this thoroughly, right? But DevRel is not, quote unquote, someone who travels to a lot of conferences, right?
But he does, though, right?
Not anymore. Way less. So again, startup, you need to wear multiple hats. I think you can see, especially in the tech world, there is DevRel that you only see in a specific channel, which I mean blog or YouTube as you grow, or conference. So for example, in Confluent, there is a DevRel that is doing a lot of meetups, like mostly 90% of her time, she's doing meetups and conference. But then she has less time, of course, for blogging. You cannot just do everything, right?
Exactly.
And so I think as you grow as as someone in DevRel, or as your team grow, you're gonna specialize in other area where you are the most comfortable. That's why, like here, saying that it's someone that's traveling, I think it's completely untrue. If you're not comfortable with big conference or speaking, applying to conference is also like, I hate that. It's taking a lot of time. Like picking the right conference, sending a topics, getting a rejection, and like, what the hell? And so I think especially with now the online content picking up, you can really, do compromising. I'm not going to cover this, and I'm going to cover over there, which I found is fine. So yeah.
And DevRel, well, maybe for the people, like DevRel stands for Developer Relations. Right?
Yeah.
We've been talking about it too. To me, like DevRel as a function, like in an organization, I'm not sure, it would be interesting to hear your input. Like to me, it's a bit like it's a function in your company that is tasked with building both external and internal community around either your product, service, your brand. Like, is that a correct representation of?
Yeah, I think it's like, so I like to define, like, so there is different sub-role you were asking just before. So developer advocate, developer relation, they all overlap somehow. Like developer advocate, you could say, like, you focus on the awareness. So it's like in marketing, we say the first part of the funnel, like people getting to know the product. And then there is maybe developer relation or developer experience, focusing on the docs and the UI, right? Feedback loop. So there's different area, but in general, you want basically to build a strong and vibrant community that help each other, as you said, around products or service. And I like to say that in general, I tell technical story to help people, achieve that. Because at the end of the day, would it be a blog or, a video or in person, you tell a technical story and to help people use a given product.
You mentioned tech advocate. We talked about DevRel. Evangelist.
Yeah.
Would you equate to advocate? Or...
Yeah, I think it's it's all overlapping. I mean, I don't have that much experience in DevRel. I have my manager, which does more. So that's a question I can give it back to him. But in my opinion, I would say they kind of overlap. I think evangelism, I see that more into a specific area rather than a product. Like, I don't know if you're a consultancy, in sustainable energy, then you're evangelist around that.
Yeah, I see.
Around the full domain and advocacy, I would say more it's more against a specific
tool or
narrow,
something?
narrow products. But again, those can be, to be honest, like I've interviewed to like 8 companies before, accepting the offer of MotherDuck, and no one has a clear clue of they all ask me like, how do you define DevRel? How do you measure efficiency of a DevRel? And
super hard, huh?
Yeah, and so they all have their idea, but the point is, I think it's really hard. But I'm curious, like, what do you how do you see like DevRel in your day-to-day, tech world?
Bart's looking at me. We had a bit of a, we have had some light discussions about the developer relations. But I don't know. I'm asking, I have no idea, but I'll just say what I kind of understood up until now, that for data roots, right, it would be kind of the ambassador of data roots in a way. When someone thinks of data roots, they think of that person building connections, building a community, knowing what it is about. So it's almost like the facing externally, right, to the community, right? So it's a bit like putting the name out there and all these things. That's kind of how
going at events and so on, like
but we don't have a data roots anyone with a dedicated role, for example. But I do think that we are to some extent conscious about building community, but it's also more because we have a lot of people that are interested in that and that take up that role a bit out of their own passion, out of their own interest, and not necessarily because they are assigned a task, but maybe that goes a bit hand in hand. Like I think Murilo does this to some extent, as host of the Datatopics podcast.
With the podcast. And I think when you mentioned that's something important, like we don't have someone dedicated. It's exactly when you start your data journey. You have your software engineer doing small report or business doing funding Excel, and you don't have dedicated people in data, right? If you start, and if just some people take that responsibility, and then as you scale, I think for you don't have specific SaaS products, so I think it's different. But I'm also curious, like as a consumer, how do you deal, like what's your experience so far with DevRel in other products than MotherDuck, for example?
So I think you're a good example, because I think when I think of MotherDuck, I think of you, right? It's like you're really the face ambassador. You have a lot of content. You do the workshops. Like you're very engaged. But I've also seen at conferences people that were developer advocates for companies, and their talks had nothing to do with the product at all. But they was like, "Oh, I'm a developer advocate about this." They were talking about like Python. It was a PyCon, right? So it makes sense, but it had nothing to do with the product. And like they mentioned it very little, but like they mentioned, I work for this. And then after the talk, I asked them, "Oh, can you tell me more about it?" And the colors matched, but not even the logo was there. And I'm like, it's cool, but I'm wondering if this is what being a tech advocate is like.
It is. So some people said that DevRel is like marketing without people knowing it's marketing. So you've been trapped. I think so. I'm doing kind of the same. Like, I hate like having this cap of marketing, but I think there is some truth to it, right? Because again, I'm an engineer first and foremost, but I do also sometimes not mentioning MotherDuck at all, or on the last slide. I mean, Jordan, don't fire me if you listen to this. But because I think that's not the main point. If people are interested or are convinced by my technical story that is somehow related or not, like into the sector, you know, about data or data engineering, they'll come back and ask questions. So, and exactly as you said, like, oh, I'm curious, like, you know, what is it that he's doing, and so on. And that's the people that, you know, that's the best that you want to attract, because you're just providing, you know, clear value to them, and after they're gonna look up to the product and so on. And that's always my goal. So
I think that is, if we see it as part of marketing, I think that's good marketing. Like you want to say someone has a problem, think about this problem, and know you can potentially use this for that. I'm not saying I'm selling this, you can use it for these problems. Like it's a different way of connecting with people.
So, and the second part I want to tell is that I forget about it. So first was basically that's marketing without knowing it, and the second part I'll come back. It's gonna come back later, but just in an important way, is that basically developer advocates always side to the developer side. So I'm the one, you know, that I was a bit grumpy internally about the product, like, oh, we should do that. I mean, I always formulate internally, like, it's like, oh, you know, I've run those things, and I'm frustrated because I'm also a user heavily of the products, right? Which is not always the case. Like, there is a lot, you know, of R&D when you build a database, and all those software engineers, they have a different background. They, you know, they get disconnected from the actual, you know, usage of this database in this context. And I'm like kind of like one of the users. So if I get feedback from someone at my workshop on that, and I'm completely agree, I'm gonna surface that a lot. And I think that's one thing, is that the DevRel should always be on the side of the developer and not on the product. So marketing or product will tell you, yeah, we can work on that, or this is not a bug, this is a feature. But I will be, you know, as transparent as
this is a bug.
Yeah, definitely, because like that, like I value the trust that people have in me outside my job as at MotherDuck, because I'm doing also content, you know, on the side on my personal channels, and I don't want that distrust to be broken.
But I think that dynamic with the community is also super relevant to improve a product. Because you know what is in the minds of the people, what works, what are frustrations, what are people happy about, and like you also have a better understanding of someone that is farther removed from the technology. To translate that into new features, into.
And so this is where it's kind of our overlap. Coming back to the role definition, there is developer relation, which are really close to the product, and their role is really about, you know, getting all ears and feedback that in a clear way. For me, it's smally and formally, like I share a couple of stuff here and there. We're still a small company, but yeah, that's like kind of example where advocacy can be on the awareness and relation more on the product side.
And it also mentions here on the just to put the blog post again.
Yeah, translator
they
feedback.
They do mention here in the DevRel the translator feedback.
Yeah, it's a good. I mean, there is a reference to an older blog in that blog. It's kind of Inception stuff, but but there are a good reference. I would recommend the audience to give it a read to understand, and also, you know, give your perspective when you meet someone, because there is actually backlash on when I give my name as a DevRel, like people intervene, oh, he's gonna sell us that. So sometimes I hide it. But I'm a data engineer, which is true. But you know, and so this is why my job title is like data engineering and DevRel. And
maybe one question. We talked a lot about the product and you being on the developer side and not the product. Does it make sense to have a DevRel for a company that doesn't have a product that they're selling then?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if you are, you know, a service, then the people you're going to talk is not necessarily the developer directly, right? So it feels hard to have a developer, because that's usually someone which is, you know, pretty technical. So what I see, if you don't have a product, you're providing service. So I don't see yeah, correct me. I don't have any example coming up in my mind. Feel free to interrupt. But then I feel like it's more like pre-sales or technical sales. That's gonna play kind of that role of like, yeah, those people would like our service to be packaged like this. Can we do something? So they feedback this, but it's not like as a technical product, they can really, report a message log or something directly, and that needs to be technical. So
interesting. Maybe, and I don't want to spend too much time, but I couldn't get out of this recording without mentioning another title, tech influencer.
I know. Yeah, so that's, I think, a new trend. Like people see, and there is a lot of backlash on all the social on Reddit, and it's been on me also. But as I said, like I have a tough skin. I'm just crying for like 3 days, and then I'm good.
Then it's fine.
But
as soon as we stop the stream.
No, but the point is that we were discussing is I started doing content just by sharing information, sharing learning, and actually it's a good process for an engineer to put your thoughts on paper. And the first blog I wrote was for the Spark Summits, so it's already like almost 4 or 5 years ago, because it was called now the AI Summit by Databricks. And anyway, it was just data engineering highlights, my top talks and my key takeaway. And I needed to do that because I was paid for the tickets, and not everybody in the team had the opportunity to go to the conference. So they asked me, can you do an internal presentation? I'm like, yeah, I could write a blog actually and share it. And Mehdi from Databricks, so the creator of Spark, shared my blog on social. Not because I was a rock star and it was an awesome blog, but because there was nobody. Like 4 or 5 years ago, the landscape has been changing drastically. And so if you roll back that time, there is a lot of people around that's been growing their audience, far bigger than me. And they all look for monetization different way. They accept sponsoring posts. They're being transparent or not. They say, yeah, for free. So they're like, it's like a marketing announcement. It's kind of clear. Other, they get the disclosure. I never had to, I accepted one time, in sponsoring thing. It's when DBT invited me to their conference, and I was like, just saying, yeah, they pay the trips and I can do whatever I want. That's the deal on content on the conference. But it's just to say that there is multiple way to monetize, as you grow your audience, and people, have different response to those kind of content or change, because people at the end, needs to pay their bills.
Exactly.
And so I think that's the bad thing about tech influencer, is that it regroup all those people. Like people still doing that for free and having a full-time job and doing it on weekend, right? People like me, which are kind of in between, does have a DevRel, and some bias against their employer, but still have some time also to do content and other stuff that embrace, like, yeah, we're a media tech influencer, so we will create a reach to your event or to your product, and I think that's where it gets a bit bad for the community, is that there is no clear definition. It's still relatively new.
I personally, maybe I'm thinking more about influencers, quote unquote, in the podcast world, because I listen to a lot of podcasts. Like I have no issue whatsoever with monetization, as long as it's transparent. Maybe that's my like, as long as you know that there's a reason that people are promoting something. I think that is important. But what I do notice is a lot of time, like, people build an audience, and at some point it reaches a certain size that monetization becomes relevant, and they do activate one way or another, one form or another of monetization, and they get a lashback from the community. Because the community is not used to it. But at the same time, like, in my opinion, like, these people, like, they invest a lot of time and effort to build this, right? To build this for the community that listens to this or watches this or reads this for free, right? I think that's also a logical thing to do.
At the end of the day, everyone needs to pay their bills, and I think.
But to me, like, the core thing is, like, be transparent. Like, what is your honest opinion, and what is something that you're promoting? I think that's
But I also think I have the impression, I don't know if this is legit or not, but I do feel like people get used to the free content in a way.
Yes,
and then
definitely.
once it's not free, they feel like they're entitled to it somehow. And I feel like if you have something, like you have a course, like, and it was free, and now you have to pay for it, for me, it's fine, right? Like it's your decision.
Ooh,
You're not,
traitor.
yeah, but like you're not forced. You're not taking money from my pocket, and now I have to. Like you don't want to do it. It's fine. Don't do
Yeah.
it. If you think it's too much money, not worth it. It's also
Yeah.
fine, right? Like there's no hard feelings,
Yeah.
right?
Are you, Mehdi, are you on Patreon or something?
No, but I'm gonna start a couple of courses. But again, like the reason I'm doing courses, yeah, there is a monetization behind the scene, but foremost is that I get too many requests. How I can scale it? Yeah, so I could do a courses for free.
Yeah.
But that takes a lot of time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so I would rather, like, my intention is like, okay, if I'm break even, based on the time invested for those kind of things. But people say, oh, you start to selling me courses. And I think there is like a lot of people like in AI, for example, jumping just on the hype and claiming AI engineer and selling course. And I think there is a lot of delusion on that. But the one advice I can give to the listener here and the community is that just take back and make your opinions. And like the tech influencer is a really big basket. So just sort it out on people, see how they, what's their background, how much content they've been putting there, where they are working for, and give your own opinion, but just don't put everybody in the same basket. That's not the case.
Yeah. And maybe segueing my way into the next topic. It's a bit of a forced one, so get ready.
A fourth one?
A bit of a forced one.
No one is noticing.
Yeah. I think I played the story in my head and I'm like, yeah, that's forcing it a bit. So I'm just letting the audience know. But sometimes it's not like about content, but maybe there's something with like open source projects, right? They start for free, open source, they get bigger. And then at one point, this takes much longer than much more time. It requires way more time. And then people decide that they need to monetize this somehow, right? And it's also a fair thing, which, I mean, there are many open source projects that kind of go through that trajectory, right? But one of the things could have been what happened with Terraform.
Oh.
Yeah, see, that was very forced.
That was a forced segue,
Yeah. No, but I think what happens is that we were in a golden area where money was free, and all the tech company were starting their project with open source and really permissive license. And so we're just there to help the community and just burn the VC cash money. And I think, again, to the same extent that some tech influencers need to pay their bills at the end, there is kind of this delusion where happening now where we see a lot of companies either increasing their price, their cloud price, or changing the license. And I mean, OpenAI is a bigger one, but Terraform, I think, was just kind of like inevitable.
It wasn't that bad of a segue. I feel like I could have done a better job, but there was some connection there.
So what is the news around Terraform?
Why am I bringing this up? That's thanks for putting me back on track. That's because, well, for a quick recap, right? So Terraform changed the license. A lot of the community was really upset. And I do think, just to highlight it is different from content online, because a lot of people contributed to Terraform because it was an open source project. So the people basically, it's like almost like Mehdi creates a course that is free, and then I contribute to the course somehow. I make a few lessons there, and then Mehdi says, oh, actually now it's going to be paid. So I feel like that would be more.
And I won't give you a penny.
And you won't give me a penny. So I think that would be a bit closer, right? So it's different for sure. So then people got mad. There's the Open Tofu. There's the cease and desist. And now HashiCorp, so the company that created Terraform, announced that HashiCorp joins IBM to accelerate multi-cloud automation. So this is
it's a big one. Huh?
Yeah. So
What's your take on that, Bart? I'm curious.
It's a difficult one, huh?
We've, I think what we will see is maybe even going more money going to the Terraform CLI. I think because there's a lot, like IBM themselves, like the Terraform provider for IBM, like they will invest more in it. I think they need to keep investing in it because all the other cloud providers, they have a vested interest.
But do you see any customer with IBM Cloud in Belgium?
No, I don't. But I think IBM will invest in it. For this reason. I think the managed services of HashiCorp,
like the Vault and whatnot.
Yeah, to be seen. How to play out in the coming years.
Yeah.
So I've heard that 80% of their revenues were coming from like 20% of their customers. So basically, to put it simply, it was a really slow growth, and things were going down. And so Red Hat, had been acquired by IBM, and this thing where it's not a matter of like how many customer you have if it doesn't translate into paid customer, and most of all like enterprise customer, where the biggest revenue is going to come from. I think this is where Red Hat was challenging, but now it's doing, I think, pretty well in IBM. And I think HashiCorp, basically, in the blog I added another blog. They mentioned that there is two options. Either they're going to be part of kind of like IBM Cloud and do the thing that you just say, like investing into the provider, or they're going to join Red Hat. And there might be some stuff licensed back to the open source community. Like to be seen, because Red Hat has still like been operated, pretty independently since they joined. But HashiCorp is not as big as Red Hat, so it's a bit a question mark on what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's difficult to make. It's difficult to look in the future. I think if we look at the open source community, if you bring up Red Hat, what everybody will also bring up is CentOS.
Yeah.
That was more or less discontinued a few years ago.
That's true. Yeah,
CentOS being the more or less open source version of Red Hat Linux, that is, which was binary compatible to Red Hat Linux, which a lot of people also attribute to the acquisition by IBM, but no one clearly knows, of course. But it's
I think indeed on the blog here that they announced, they do mention that Terraform HashiCorp will be a division. I think I read it here somewhere. Basically be a division within IBM. And they also mentioned the open source community. Let me see, where is it?
Yeah, I think Microsoft is also a good example. Like IBM is like, we see that as a big, corporate company, not doing anything for open source, but time has changed, and Microsoft is a good example where no one would have thought that they would be, the biggest contributor. So who knows, like how they're gonna play their cards.
Exactly. And I think that you can make the parallel actually with GitHub, where when the acquisition of Microsoft of GitHub happened, everybody thought it was the end of the open source era of GitHub. Tomorrow everybody was gonna use GitLab. Did it happen? Like it's still the default for open source is GitHub, and I think they're still very good at keeping that position.
Very true.
Despite or maybe even thanks to being part of a big player like Microsoft. But my personal thing, I think Terraform CLI we'll see continuing for the foreseeable future. The managed services, I don't know. I think there's also a lot of overlap. If you look at the big landscape of IBM, maybe they have some convergence plans for the future, but let's see.
And IBM is a winner in this acquisition? I think it's a good move from IBM.
I mean, now, yes, because it's the economy is downturn. So, I mean, it was going down for HashiCorp. So, but it's like, when there are other companies that have been devaluated and being acquired. So for those big boats, I think
it's a good moment.
It's a good moment
to do acquisitions.
Like we are like small citizen, and we just buy stocks when they're low, and they just buy a company when they're low.
Normal, yeah. Yes, true. And you mentioned GitHub, Bart. Have you ever heard of this GitHub Copilot thingy?
I think I've heard of it, yeah.
I think you've heard of it. There's this new thing, Copilot Workspace. Well, new thing. I don't know. 22 hours ago, super new thing.
So it's super new. So the thing is that it's been announced at the GitHub Universe in December.
Yes.
But there was no, it was just a marketing teaser.
Okay. This is the first.
This is a technical preview now. And this is really impressive. I put like, so there was.
What does it do? What is the
so it has access to the whole code base. So
of
for
your code base.
Of your code base.
Okay.
So whatever you ask, so here you can ask, to plan something, add, a button somewhere,
Yeah.
He
Oh, nice.
knows which file it needs to interact to update and add a button to the app. And so you can extend like, automated PR for change or bug fix. And I think it's like, you heard about the
Devin.
and the marketing thing. And I think here, it's in technical preview, but my guess is that there is kind of like less promises, but better commitment. That what, Devin did, where it was like, it's an AI engineer and like everybody's always going to replace. Everybody see the added value of GitHub Copilot. It's not replacing any developer. It's, improving their productivity.
Yeah.
And I think that's
So-
clearly our next step.
So Murilo has the teaser video here on the screen. Maybe for the listeners, like, do I understand correctly from this? Like, you go to your GitHub project page, you ask a question somewhere, like you say, like, I have this UI, please add a button with this functionality, and it's gonna create a PR for you, basically.
Yeah. So, but there is also integration within VS Code, so you can ask the current chat Copilot, and it will update the files.
Oh wow!
But this is like, I would say, the end-to-end use case where you just go to the repo, ask something, and it create the PR.
Yeah.
Versus you could actually do, like, I do stuff like this. I give context, I basically change some thoughts on prompting, and I give like, this is how this file looks like. This is, I don't give everything.
Yeah.
And then I say, can you implement this and where I should put the file?
Yeah.
No, those pre-prompt is not needed anymore because he has the full context.
Will be super valuable, huh? Because when I code in VS Code, when I use Copilot, like I use it a bit as a very smart autocomplete.
Yeah.
But it's always like in a very local way.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
I want to introduce this logic, but I'm now in this file, so I'm going to create this little part of this logic, and then I'm going to move to another file, and then I'm going to add that part. And this is basically a way to hopefully do it in one go.
That's why it's called like GitHub Copilot Workspace. It's just like it's covering. So I think this. You can join the waiting list. I just joined this morning. It's technical preview, so it's going to take some time, I think, before it getting in hands of multiple people. But yeah, I think it's could be nice. The first thing I thought about this is like documentation websites. So I am also responsible for the documentation website, and sometimes you have less technical people, so everything is in Git. There is PR. Sometimes there is people, want to fix typo or rephrase something. You give them access to the repo there, and not someone that's comfortable with Git. So you could say, hey, give me a PR, improve this typo on this, and it just do the commit on the right markdown file and so on.
That's true. There's a lot of possibilities there.
Yeah.
And I also think that this smart code completion, in a way, that they'll move more towards indeed like the whole, you have the context of your whole project as a whole. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
There's also, just to be complete here, I haven't used this, another AI assistant, I guess, code assistant called Cody. It's from SourceGraph. So I think, I don't know too much about it, but even the tagline here is AI that knows your entire code base, right? So there's a VS Code extension. And I think SourceGraph also, their product is related to having the whole project as a graph, I guess, like the dependencies and whatnot. So I do see like this is one.
But this is, if I understand correctly, like this is you're using this as a smart autocomplete with the full context.
Yes. Yeah.
But you're still making the change locally.
I believe
with the workspace, like you're changing it everywhere where it's relevant.
I feel so bad for all the startups or those projects. Yeah, because the point is that GitHub, even if GitHub gives like a half-backed features of this compared to, for example, this case, they just have the integration to make it the developer experience like just delightful, right? The same with like VS Code and Dev Container and all those things. So I think it's gonna be really hard to compete. And I think in general, that's something I've been advocating in data in general, is that developer experience over features. Like how easy it is to use and understand your product. This is the number of features that there is, because there is a plethora of tools. And when you pick a library, a framework, if it's difficult to understand, documentation is not clear, for you, the productivity is going to go down, but someone else also has to maintain that. Like
Yeah.
you're not going to stay forever there or in the project. And so I think in the same way, like I think GitHub has a really big edge over there.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think also features is probably easier to sell to the managers. Like I'm going to work on this feature and this feature, because I do feel, I agree with you 100%, but I do feel like developer experience is something harder to quantify. But I've also seen projects that I feel like they have so many features that the project's almost bloated in a way.
Yeah.
You know, like they do a lot of things. Nothing is amazing. They do a lot of stuff. It's like the Swiss knife, like, or jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing, right? And it's like, to me, sometimes I'd rather pick like 5 different tools, and each tool does one thing really well and has a very nice experience, than pick one that does all the things as well.
Yeah, no, that's true. But that's the way, like how you sell it to business, their added value. But then there is, I really feel like, as you know, with your developer view, when you pick things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, indeed, I agree.
And they're like, developer experience is just gonna beat any features that it provides. Yeah. So I would say yes, 10 tools that everyone is super easy to use and do one thing could be actually better than.
I agree. Maybe before the kerfuffle in AI part. Kerfuffle. I was just adding the notes live.
For all the commotion.
editing in production. Just wanted to share a bit about this as well, because you mentioned the code completion. That Snowflake actually released LLM for enterprise AI. That's what they call it. Efficiently intelligent, truly open. So this is from the Snowflake research. So I read this article as well.
They have such a great name, and you can do so many things with it. Huh?
Arctic.
And then now it's Snowflake Arctic.
Indeed.
But Polars is not belonging to us, but that could be a good acquisition for that.
That is true.
That's true. Huh? That's true.
Oh wow, yeah.
Oh wow.
Like their M&A strategy is like purely based on.
Or chess game.
Yeah.
No, but DuckDB makes more sense.
Maybe it's one part of the strategy of the creator of Polars, right?
Yeah.
Way ahead of their game.
Yeah, that's true. So it's an LLM. I was a bit like, okay, is this a service on Snowflake? Apparently it's not. It's like a purely open source model, right?
And it's a domain specific model. It's
So it is domain specific, and that's the thing that I was a bit, because they mentioned Arctic is efficiently intelligent, truly open. I think they even made some more bold claims that it's the best or whatever. What do they mean by efficiently intelligent and truly open? Truly open is Apache 2.0 license, so truly open in that sense. Efficiently intelligent, they called it enterprise AI because, according to them, this excels in tasks that are related to enterprise AI, which is SQL generation or SQL, depending on what you prefer. Code generation. So one of the benchmarks is actually what you're saying, Bart. There's a data set that, based on doc strings or function names, you have to create the code.
Okay.
So this is the benchmark. And also, I think it was like breaking down prompts into instructions, right? So that's what I was really looking into. So here, top tier enterprise intelligence at incredibly low training cost, right? So they mentioned here the data sets, and I also looked into them to really see.
So they're also open data sets.
They are
transparent class trained on.
Yeah, like basically the benchmark. So here below you can see the
Oh, these are the
scores.
benchmark sets. Okay.
Yeah. And for those, they used these data sets, right? And basically they called enterprise AI an average between SQL generation using the Spider data set, coding, which is human eval plus, and MPP. MPP is most basic Python programming or something, and instruction following. So if eval. Which I think is cool. I think, but to be honest, like they do have other differences on the architectures, right? And one thing I thought it was pretty cool is that they do have a series of blog posts on dissecting LLMs.
And what is their use case for this?
It's really just to create SQL. I mean, they're really saying like this is. I think they're going to integrate this on the UI.
I know what their use case. It's marketing. I think like if you miss the AI train right now just by sharing free content or doing free content like this, people are not going to perceive you as like, yeah, are you following this up?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
they've been integrating stuff in their UI on SQL generation and so on. But I think today, like a lot of other data companies is mostly about awareness.
Yeah.
And we'll see how it gets. But yeah, I'm a bit skeptical. I'm happy to try it out regarding SQL generation, because I think SQL encoding, like we worked at the MotherDuck on text to SQL model, and that's really specific compared to coding.
Yeah.
Because coding, your prompt is going to be much more accurate usually as a software engineer that say, can you give me a class or whatever. But SQL, you need to have, you know, a good metadata catalog to feed to say, what's the, you know, churn this month, for example. And I think Databricks also released last year something, I don't know the name, to train on company data, right? Don't cementing and you don't define what is a customer for you, and you know there is a manual work to be there. So yeah, I think there is a lot of you know, smoke and mirrors over there, but I do think it's nice. I think it's nice that people like just see at the blog. First thing is AI. I know it's sorry, I mislead at Snowflake, but I wouldn't be surprised that people start to just highlight more you know, AI work at different companies.
Yeah, I think so. But I think looking, so just to, I do believe that part of the reason why they try to build this as well was to try to integrate it in their UI, like having autocomplete as well. Because even looking at the benchmarks and the metrics, it's only Python data sets, like writing code in Python or SQL, which is exactly what Snowflake has, right?
Yeah. And I think they're my interest, what I would have interest in is not necessarily generating the SQL, but more asking a question, not caring about the SQL.
Yeah.
And I think that's they have the right product to be able to do that as well, to put it in front of business users and to say how many customers that we have last month. But but for that you have the challenge that you just mentioned, like you have these tables with very often very undescriptive column, like abbreviations of column names. So you need some metadata on what does this column actually contain, right? Like the column is CTR_name, maybe means customer name, maybe it means click-through rate, right? You need some extra information, and that's indeed something that when it comes to a code base, like you can extract the logic from the code around it.
Yeah, indeed.
But you don't have the pipelines coming before that.
Yeah, you don't have this hard dependency on data, which is different. And I think this is where we're getting into the delusion phase, right? We started with the hype where people say, this is not really working. No clue if your data model or your data is, is not working out, your output is not working out. But still, it is interesting to see that it start to be embedded, here and there. So I'm really like looking forward that those are being pushed back to the product, and especially with like those smaller models coming in, that we really start to have, lower cost usage of this within your existing data warehouse product.
Just I also put on the screen for people following the live stream. This is kind of how the data set looks like, which is very similar to what you were mentioning. Like there's a question natural language, like what is the maximum minimum budget for the departments, and then there's the SQL query.
This is their benchmark set.
This is the benchmark, probably. I mean, I don't know if they tested them. Well, if they trained on this, there's leakage, right? But
I mean, like you see the column like here, the max, like just the line, budget in billion. That's the column name. Like that's super obvious column name.
That's not real life, right? If you've ever looked at a table coming from SAP, that is not real life.
Exactly. So that's actually interesting to look. That could be like an entire podcast or blog. Give me an idea to say like let's look at the trained data set and how real it is, like close to real life.
Indeed,
I mean, even this, like this is the Python stuff. Like they put MBPP, and it's like coding, right? Like code intelligence. But even here is like it's most basic Python programming. So it's like, it's not
but their audience, I don't think their audience is pretty advanced in Python in general. I think even if they are, it's mostly an opportunistic. But I bet that most people that have Python pipeline, if they move to Snowflake, they might be, just saying, okay, it's a small company, or they don't want to have another compute runtime.
True.
But Yeah,
True.
I bet it's mostly data analysts or that do a bit of Python, or some data engineer maybe. But so for them, I think that's good enough. Yeah.
True. But I think for me, after reading this and thinking, because they also talk about the inference cost and all that and the number of parameters, but to me, it really just feels like they specialized on one domain, and
Yeah.
that's why it's higher performance. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think that's also natural, right? And more on AI, and namely AI kerfuffle. What do you got, Bart?
Some legal commotion. I think an interesting piece of news. I think it's from yesterday. Let me just quickly check from the Financial Times that the Financial Times and the OpenAI have a licensing deal, a content licensing deal.
Do you have a subscription for Financial Times?
That's the big question of the podcast.
Because I wanted to put it here, but
I can actually open it. I can actually open the article without
Oh,
that
really?
subscription. Yeah. But so it's an article on the Financial Times, but we'll link another where there is no paywall. But this is interesting, especially with in the legal stuff going on in the background with the New York Times suing both OpenAI and Microsoft for using their content without a licensing deal. And basically what happens here, most likely, because we don't have a lot of the details, is that this is after the fact that probably OpenAI also used Financial Times data, and now they have struck a deal that where there is a mutual benefit, and there is very little information on the exact terms, but it allows OpenAI to, one, use their data for training, but also to use live excerpts, live summaries from articles to answer queries in ChatGPT.
Do you know the requirement from the Times, like to quote maybe the source? Because
it's not in the article, and I don't think it's very new, so we will see the implementation in the coming
because
weeks.
I had two big things happening to me. Like I saw last week, I was chatting on concept around LLMs, and ChatGPT referred me to a blog of someone in my direct network that I know. Like it was cool.
With
coding.
a quote.
I ask usually my prompt, like, if you have source, give me the information. But it was actually a blog from a friend that I know, and I read that blog, so I felt a bit stupid. And I saw another tweet from GraphText. I know someone over there that said that they get leads. People are like ChatGPT is recommending GraphText, the company product for specific use case. So it's kind of like the new SEO, game within, but no one knows like still how it works. It's still the black box. So I think for Times it would be, still a big deal if you like coding and then it's like get like 1 month for free. If you click here, I'm sure we are just a couple of months ahead before getting ads within the chat.
Let's see. Actually, there was a very recent interview with Sam Altman. But who was it? A long podcast interview. I forgot with who the podcast host was. But he actually mentioned this advertisement, that he was very against advertisement and that he wants a model without advertisement. But let's see what the future holds, right?
Yeah.
That's
who knows?
Who knows? But it's interesting because it's apparently, and I didn't know, it's the 5th deal this year.
Oh.
Where OpenAI struck a deal with press agency. So it has similar agreements with Associated Press, with Axel Springer, a Germany-based news agency, Le Monde in France, and Prisa Media in Spain.
Oh wow!
All for which we don't know any of the financial terms.
And this is a bit scary. I don't know, like that they don't share anything.
This is a bit scary, but I think it's also for everybody like in this space a bit scary in the sense that what the New York Times is doing can go either way, right? Like because what the New York Times is doing is that what OpenAI is saying is that their use of this data is under fair use policy and copyright law. That's what they're stating. And New York Times is saying, no, we want to take this to court. We do not believe that this is fair use. But if the court decides that this is fair use, then there is a precedent to say we don't even need all these collaborations with these players. We can just go for it. So there's also maybe like there is this gap period where there's also an opportunity for these companies to partner with OpenAI, because now there is like this uncertainty for where there's also an incentive for OpenAI to partner.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot riding on that decision. Huh?
Yeah, and I'm very interested to see where we will be in a year from now.
Yeah,
because all of these legal procedures take a lot of time. Huh?
yeah.
So,
And they're not ready. I mean, to license stuff. I know, like for example, in another area, it's I don't know what's the name of the company, but it's the deep fake Tom Cruise. The guy created a company, Metamorph or something.
yeah,
I
you
think,
have
for
a few
AI.
of these.
But there is one company which is the best in deep fake advertisement. So they license, and they did a lot of research and work on how to license the face of someone, because this is where the opportunity, exactly as you mentioned, so that someone from basketballs can say, yeah, you can use my face to create video ads or our voice and so on. But there is nothing legal that's been built around this. And so I think that's a lot of work. I think also what I seen in fintech, for example, is that it's also a super struggle to be the first one and work with government and legal procedure. So usually if you're the second, it's the best, because all the thing has been there, and you just and you just do better than your competitor. Is sometimes like they have they are there first, so that's their marketing advantage. But I think the point is, if OpenAI, like we see all those deals that's being done, it's gonna be maybe an healthy more market where other companies like Cohere and so on is gonna be able to build those relationships with different paper, major news paper.
Yeah, let's see.
And maybe on the most awaited piece of news.
Yeah, because this is a very interesting segue. Actually, it's very long. So we discussed last time actually that there's currently a big hip hop beef going on, a bit of a fight between Kendrick and Drake. Too much niche to go into here, but we brought it up last time because Drake in his diss track used AI generated voice. So he transferred his voice. He sang something, rapped something, and transferred it to someone else's voice, both to Tupac's and to Snoop Dogg's.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about the hip hop beef is that now that every time that something comes up, there's this discussion: is this real or is this AI generated? Like, people don't know anymore.
Yeah,
it's so good. And now that Drake used these deep fakes, basically, and it's a bit similar to the main that you were just saying, Mehdi. So he used this deep fake of Tupac Shakur, who passed away already a long time ago, but his estate basically threatened legal action against Drake.
Yeah.
And Drake took it off by now. That's what happened.
Okay.
But the difficult thing of this is that deepfakes voice, but also like face recognizability, I'm definitely not an expert in this, but how I understand it is that the person's likelihood is not covered by the Copyright Act. So there is even less of a legal framework around a person's likelihood.
Yeah.
And that here there is also, you have a bit this same fear, like no one really wants to take this to court, because even much more than with copyright, like if a court would rule that, for example, Drake's use of Tupac's voice is allowed, then you have like this huge economic shock to the music industry.
Yeah, that's true.
So everybody is there's also a rumor that is why there's no actual legal action. There's just a threat of going into legal actions.
Yeah.
Because everybody is super hesitant to move to getting a precedent, because no one knows what's the outcome will be.
Yeah. So it's mostly just to have a settlement.
Yeah.
To have a bit more money. Yeah, there is a lot of stuff. I think there is on YouTube, there is a channel I really like, which is There Are Wind It. And he takes like common song like Michael Jackson and do like a country version of,
I heard it.
Of Thriller.
It's good.
It's really good. And that's really fun thing. But it's true that there is no legal framework for this around music, and we'll need it. And there is also a dystopia where people say, no, we don't want to have a new hit from Michael Jackson, which I found like, yeah, that's probably, I think to coming back initially to the podcast that I said sideways, like, transparency is key here.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
I think that's
if you mention like this is AI generated and you're okay with that, then that's fine. But yeah, you need to be aware, because otherwise it's not fair to the consumer. It's not fair to the original artist. To say, and I think it's like like you get some stuff from IKEA, or you buy like homemade furniture. We're gonna get homemade music, homemade video, because a lot of things is gonna be generated by AI, right?
And you also very quickly get into this ethical discussion, like with for example deceased artists like
exactly,
Tupac Shakur. What if the estate sells his likelihood to, and that the estate is okay for it to be used, that they strike a licensing deal? Like, I mean, there's a very ethical component to that as well.
But there was an article that say, like, would you watch a podcast with Abraham Lincoln, like with a question like discussing philosophy about like today's society with his experience? Like, this is really crazy, but we could potentially do that. And it's like, which legal framework you're gonna put that? It's pretty hard.
Difficult, huh?
That was also one video, I think, was like Joe Rogan having a podcast with Steve Jobs. After as well, they got famous. But yeah, it's tricky. Yeah, it's like because I also think it's like if you had Abraham Lincoln, you really would like the person to be there, right? Like the ideas and it's not just the image and the voice, right? It's like
But with the metaverse, you're gonna be there. Huh?
Yeah. It's like it feels like this is the beginning of a Black Mirror episode.
Of course it
is.
Of course. Why do you think I have a Darth there?
That's true.
I have a Jedi there.
It all comes together.
Yeah, let's see. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm very interested to see where all this, from the moment that we have legal precedent and what it will actually mean, and to for companies also to have a bit of a guidance on what is okay, what is not okay to do. And today I have the feeling like 90% is gray zone.
Yeah, it is.
So.
Indeed. I think this is a good place to wrap up. If everyone's okay with it, unless you have something that you really want to.
Do you have a hot take?
There's a hot take. You want me to? You want to hit the button there?
Oh yeah.
Oh, hot.
This is a hot take that Mehdi brought.
Yeah, actually, it's a really small project, but so it's mostly just to express my my opinion, because it's a really small project, but I haven't seen prompt data engineering. So meaning like embed it in the tools of data engineers. I think it's coming. Like we talked a bit with like Snowflake, but where basically I'm writing a data frame and I say, so I think there is an example here, return the country. So I have a data set with the key, from key code from country, and I want the string of the country, for example. We can do that with LLM. I think the limit today is like we are relying on third-party API calls, and the size of the LLM is still a bit too big. But I think we haven't seen anything invested into the data engineering landscape with LLMs.
I saw one thing,
but you're talking here about like querying a data set, or really setting up data pipelines from one source to target.
Yeah, I think that, but I think really just helping us to create data set with LLMs directly.
Okay.
It's like remove any punctuation problem rather than having us to look at the data set and encoding those things, for example.
So saying in natural language, like, please create this data set with per month, this KPI, these values, use these sources for it, and keep it up to date.
But in building in the tools that we are using today, so that because today we still like write manually like monkey, like it's like, okay, do this, do that, and we copy paste, but it's not integrated. I don't see, like, for me it's like I'm calling a function and this function is doing magic stuff behind the scene, rather than me having to. And now would you see function.
That to be really like what kind of tools are you thinking about?
Spark or any data frame libraries. I think it's good to embrace that, because like that's more function based. So you can say, remove nulls if there is any, and so you may have a column, which doesn't have nulls, so have a 0, and it gives you a report back and add the code base. So yeah, a bit more interactivity and look to help data engineer rather than having a context switch where I have a chat box.
I have seen like actually in Spark.
Yeah, the English SDK.
English
exactly.
SDK.
So I think this is a good example.
So this, I mean, I heard about it, but you still need an API key, right? So it's
Yes.
still like a plugin in a way.
Yes.
I haven't used this myself, but you have like this PySpark
Yeah.
AI, you activate it and whatnot. And then you have a similar, so this is just SQL,
Yeah.
but then you have this DF, so the data frame
Exactly.
.ai .transform, and then
Yeah.
you have basically a prompt.
So this is one example, actually. This
Yeah.
is the only one that I saw. I should have mentioned this one because
Yeah.
I saw the small side project.
But this
But
is the only
still,
one I've
it's-
seen as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually I've seen it, but I haven't, like
But-
I saw this once and I haven't seen any
Usage,
updates or
yeah.
anything
Huh.
or...
But this is also the arguably, even though we discussed a lot of challenges with metadata before, like this is the easy case. Like you have a data set and you want to query it in natural language,
Yeah.
right? Like so you behind the scenes you build up some SQL to query that, right? If you have metadata, you can assume maybe we're going to get relatively close, but it's much harder to say I'm going to build this data pipeline. I want to stream that from there to there. I want to fetch these data sources. Like
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So like you just make a prompt and then you would actually do the data sources, join the stuff and already transform and push in the other one.
yeah, like for example, if you would, if I'm just thinking about how I would do it. Like if I'm building a Spark-based data pipeline in VS Code, what I would like to have is that there is a lot of context on what are the sources I'm connecting to.
Yeah.
What are the things like where am I writing out to? Like
Yeah.
what is my orchestration tool? Like how do I deploy them, orchestrate? What options do I have there? Like to have all that in your context basically, so that you can prompt for that.
Yeah, but I still think there isn't. I haven't seen anything. I mean, this
No,
is
no,
a small
indeed,
thing.
yeah.
But I think that the technology is not maybe ready to be embedded in the tools. But yeah, I would love to. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, I need like country code, or I need Celsius to Fahrenheit conversion.
Yeah.
And I build those things, and I'm like, I should be able to just ask it. Like
But-
that's really common thing.
I think a very fair point is what you mentioned. It's like typically what do we miss in this whole chain is like rich metadata on the
Yeah, it's
data
true.
that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, there is like small thing where like Celsius to Fahrenheit, like that's a consider should be a function, and and it's built in. And I think building like a repository of like common data tasks on cleaning up, parsing, or you have an address and fuzzy matching, all those kind of thing that you use. Like you should just have one like prompt and it should be doing for you.
Regex. Oof.
Yeah. That's like, that's I think the first thing I started to use ChatGPT was for regex. Yeah.
Man, yeah.
How often have you visited regex101.com?
Every time I use regex, like 100% of the time I go there. But like really, like I really avoid regex as much as possible. If I need to, even if I go to ChatGPT, how do I do this? Then, oh yeah, you can use this regex expression. I was like, nope, I'm gonna look for some other way. Like, I just can't.
There was at one point in my career where I thought I don't really need regex 101. Like where I had the feeling like I'm becoming good at regex, and then I thought maybe I went too far.
Yeah.
Maybe I need a change of pace.
Like you were bragging to your friends, and then they're like, everyone's looking at you weird. It's like, use that much? Yeah, no, I'm not a big fan of regex, but cool. Let's see. Maybe there's a side project there to go some more stuff.
Yeah,
on the LLM
Indeed.
space. Yeah. True. And I think with that, we can wrap up. Actually, maybe just take a couple steps back. Maybe we can end the podcast with a different outro. Maybe I know you talked about Gen AI music and you released a very tear-dropping song.
Not sure if I can do this on the spot. I generated a song,
But can't you
On
just share
Sumo.
yeah. Suno.ai, and it is crazy good.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy good.
Do you have share already?
I think so. I hope the people will hear it.
Maybe I'll also put Suno.ai on the screen.
Wait.
Are we ready?
Yes.
You hear it, right?
Maybe, but
Yeah,
just
we
real
hear
quick, this is the website that you use, right? You just put a prompt and they'll create a song for you. This is what you did.
And it is, but like with super minimal efforts.
Yes.
Like I'm very if this is where we are today, it's hard to imagine a world where we can distinguish this from actual songs in 2 years from now.
Yeah.
All right, play.
I'll play it.
Up to the sun, feeling so alive in a world where beauty's found in every stride. Murilo, the Brazilian guy, so fly. Morning breeze in his hair, he starts to rise. Stepping outside with a smile so wide, embracing the day with nothing to hide. Through the black meadows, dogs by his side. Big frolic gameplay, soaking up the vibe. As he runs, the rhythm starts to groove. His thoughts in the lace, every step feels smooth. The meadow stage, the dogs a rap crew. They move in harmony, a symphony they pursue.
Great song. That's great.
That was great. That was great.
Yeah, I think it's a hit.
It's a hit.
Billboard, top of the charts. I listened to the song on repeat now. For some reason, it spoke to me. I don't know. Just
It's your song.
and you saw that he talked about the two dogs that this guy, the hero of the song has, which as Mehdi knows. Yeah,
Mehdi, thanks a lot for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Super cool to having you here.
Yeah,
Indeed.
I'll see you around.
Hope you had as much of a good time as we did.
Of course. If there is ducks, I'm all.
There we go. All right. Thank you.